Okay, let's get started, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good night to everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Larissa, and I will be your moderator for this event today. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, wherever you're tuning in from the world, to attend our very important event, Poverty Without Peace, Gender-Based Poverty During Armed Conflict. To tell you a little bit about myself, I have been a fellow for the Tokyo-based international NGO with UN Special Consultative Status, Human Rights Now, for the past 3 years. Human Rights Now was established in 2006 by a group of human rights professionals, including lawyers, scholars, and journalists, as the very first international human rights NGO in Japan. With over 700 members across the world, Human Rights Now works for the promotion and protection of human rights for people globally, with a special focus in Asia. Currently, Human Rights Now has a presence in Tokyo, Osaka, New York, Myanmar, and Geneva, and our activities extend throughout Asia and to conflict areas in the Middle East. Currently, I reside in Bangkok, but when I'm home in the United States, I represent Human Rights Now on the ground in the UN headquarters in New York. I will introduce all of our lovely speakers right before their individual presentations. And I know it's been a heavy week for a lot of us. It can be incredibly frustrating and tiring to attend UN meeting after UN meeting when we feel like we see little actual progress on the ground and even backsliding sometimes on women's rights and gender equality. So to start off this session, I want to pose an icebreaker to our panelists. What is one thing that brought you joy this week or today? Ida, feel free.
Okay, what brought me joy this week? So my daughter a few days ago at school had a sports day, and I didn't think that she was much of a sports person because, she's a teenager and usually they spend their time in their room and you don't know anything about them. Um, she ended up getting first and second place in all of the games that were at the sports day and all of the sports, which really shocked me, but also made me extremely happy. So that's.
You have a little Olympian. Sophia, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I think, well, I have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old daughter. So I have two daughters, and their grandparents are visiting this week. So, their smiles when they see the grandparents is just one thing that always never fails to brings me joy. So I'm
Oh,
really
that's
happy
so
to see them
special.
smiling. Yeah.
Very special. Noah, Sir, do you want to go next?
Yes, this week is busy week, no? So we have been run to many meetings and many side events, and I saw a lot of women's from the war, and we also share experience and also get to meet with any policymaker. So it is good for the women to raise the voice, especially women who are in the conflict area. They most survive and struggle. So we get to raise the voice for them. So this is also really happy that to get to this 68 CSW section. Thanks.
No, that is one of the best parts, I feel like, about these meetings is knowing you're not alone. You have this community like with you, standing with you. Yuka, do you want to go next?
Actually, I was so busy too, and then I didn't have much like a personal time for joy. But yes, this week I have heard that ruling party of Japan, the Liberal Democratic Party, submitted a statement to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, urging a ceasefire of Gaza. So I'm doing the advocacy every day nowadays. So it was kind of joy for me. Yeah.
No, that
Not
is
so fun, but
seeing your seeing your work have actual tangible results. That I think is a great joy. You
thank
should
you.
be proud of that. Kazuko, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So I came here in New York, and then especially happy to have this session and meet the remarkable guests, and especially I had the opportunity to meet with Nassau So and Ning Hong in person yesterday. That's a great opportunity for us. Yeah, that's so great.
I know I have FOMO not being in New York right now. I wish I could be on the grounds with all of you guys. And lastly, Ningli Kwan, do you want to tell us what brings you joy?
Yes, what bring me joy today is like connecting with you all from Japan and Ukraine, Gaza. I would hope to learn all of you from the ground information, especially from Gaza and Ukraine. It's good to connect with women from a conflict area. Thank you very much.
That is the perfect segue to just get right into things then. As everyone knows, during this webinar, we will be discussing the gross violations of human rights during armed conflict, which seriously affect women and girls around the world. Ongoing armed conflicts not only kill women and girls, but they also push a significant number into poverty. So our speakers will be discussing this during this webinar today. We will be starting off first with Miss Sophia Karaoka. Sophia, take the floor.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I have a few slides prepared, so let me just share my screen and start on the topic. Okay. So again, thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Sophia, and I represent the Tokyo-based NPO called NPO Koreane, which's main focus is to build bridges between Ukraine and Japan. And since Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, our focus has shifted towards helping those who are currently in Ukraine, those who are especially vulnerable at these times. And it's really great to have this opportunity to speak, to raise awareness on how Russia's armed conflict has impacted women and children, and how we as a society can help those in these most vulnerable times. And this year, especially, it marks a very important milestone as we reach 10 years since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine. And starting with illegal annexation of Crimea and following with sending Russian troops on the ground to eastern regions of Ukraine, this war has brought unimaginable suffering and torture, propaganda, and countless war crimes to Ukraine. But before we discuss all of these human rights violations, I think it's especially important to get the context of this war. And it's very important to understand that this invasion is not just 2 years, it's not 10 years, but has been the relationship between these two countries is not that of a brotherly nation, as Putin puts it, but rather that of an occupier, Russia, and the occupied Ukraine. And when we look at just in the 100 years, Ukraine has gained independence and have been reinvaded by the Soviets, the predecessor to Russia. The culture, the language, the people have gone through enormous destruction through the Russification process, which is still ongoing to this day. And we've experienced genocide through hunger called Holodomor, in which 20% of Ukrainian population vanished in just 1 year and a half. And we see the Great Purge and the political repression in the 30s and the 60s, and that we still see to this day have forced many to flee their homes, and for those who were unlucky, simply disappeared. And just 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union and Ukraine gaining independence, the same system, the same form of dictatorship, only slightly changing its form, has reinvaded Ukraine in 2014, which is the result that we see today. And I think this topic has been not discussed enough, but since 2014, although it was limited to just the eastern part of Ukraine, there's been vast violations of human rights. And I think for just internal displacement, there's been 1.7 million had to leave their homes. And just in the first few weeks of illegal annexation of Crimea, predominantly Crimean Tatars and mainly women and children have left the peninsula for the mainland Ukraine. And it's also important to remember that Russian militants were especially cruel towards civilians. And here you see just one example, a civilian woman named Irina Dovhan. And according to her testimony, she was beaten, humiliated for days. She was held in a jail and interrogated, and then handed over to the mercenaries, who then subjected her to torture, shooting pistols next to her ears and threatening to rape her. And the study shows that there were 79 places on the territory that was outside of Ukraine's control. But according to these there were 79 places of detention centers in the eastern part of Ukraine that was outside of Ukrainian control. But according to the victims, these networks of illegal places of detention were much broader, and at least 3,000 people were released from these places. That's been confirmed by Ukrainian authorities only by October 2015. So 3,000 people have experienced these detention centers in just 1 year of occupation by Russia. But this scale of invasion was amplified. It didn't begin until February 24, 2022. It was amplified. And with this Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it's brought unimaginable personal suffering, and as Russia seeks to erase this Ukrainian independence and Ukrainian resilience. It has committed countless war crimes, including extrajudicial killings, torture, sexual violence, indiscriminate bombings of civilians, schools, hospitals, residential areas. It's repeatedly attacked energy infrastructure and making civilian lives insecure, which has impacted the entire population of Ukraine. As we say it, there isn't a single person in Ukraine that doesn't know of someone who has been killed by this war. That can be a friend, an acquaintance, or a colleague. And with this violence, there's been 3.7 million who are displaced internally, 6.5 million people have left the countries, and 14.6 million are still in need of humanitarian assistance. And of course, the most vulnerable in these situations are women and children. This war has brought separation for families. For some, that means their husbands are fighting in the front lines. For some, that might mean separation by death. For some, that could mean leaving the country to provide safety for their children while their husbands stay behind due to age limitation for leaving the country. And whatever that case might be, women are substituting men in the workforce to care for themselves and their children. But unfortunately, not everyone is able to do so. So in the recent study, we see that among all of the Ukrainians who are unemployed, 75% are women. And for those who had to leave the country, that has language barriers. There's unavailability for childcare, which limits their ability to find employment, to start a life somewhere else, which does put them at a greater risk of poverty. And at the same time, this displacement for women and children puts them at a greater risk for human trafficking. And we've seen cases in Japan as well. It may not be such an obvious case, but perpetrator may approach a refugee posing to help, gaining their trust, and then using that to their advantage, which then could potentially move on to either sexual harassment or violence from the person they came to trust. And additionally, as a result of these continuous attacks on infrastructure, on critical civilian infrastructure, many schools are forced to close down. And as families prioritize survival over schooling, that does create a huge risk and huge limitation for their access to education. Just in the last 2 years, close to 4,000 educational facilities have been damaged, and 150,000 residential buildings have been either damaged or completely destroyed. And these are targeted for their purpose to threaten civilians, to decrease their motivation. And only yesterday and the day before, we've seen even more attacks on these high-rise buildings in civilian areas that have absolutely no military target close by. And these attacks on civilian infrastructure does put a lot of people on health risk as well. And in the last 2 years, over 1,500 medical facilities. That's 1 in 10 hospitals have been damaged, and almost 200 have been completely destroyed. We've seen doctors working with no lights, with the critical energy infrastructure being targeted. There were some period of time where energy or the lights were not available in these hospitals. And unfortunately, these attacks on medical facilities does include maternity hospitals. And as raids go off, women have no choice but to give birth underground shelters. And for some, that might mean they may not have the capacity to move to the bomb shelters as they're giving birth and are forced, have no choice to stay in these maternity hospitals that could potentially become a target for the attacks. And through this, by official numbers only, 10,000 civilians, and that's 500 children, have been killed and 20,000 have been injured. But what's important here is that we always forget that this is not the actual number, because we still don't have access to the occupied areas. There are thousands of buried in Mariupol, Kherson, and other occupied areas, and the occupying authorities have been working very hard to hide these evidences, building new apartment building over the graves and burning the bodies to hide these war crimes. And with every free territories, we find mass graves, many of which are women and children with signs of tortures. Just to give a more idea of how vast it is, it's been confirmed that in just 1.5 months of occupation, limiting to only Kyiv region, 1,600 civilians have been killed. So the question is, how many mass graves will we find in the eastern territories that have been occupied for more than 10 years? And we now know, thanks to freeing these territories and thanks to the testimonials of the survivors, we know what it means to live under Russian occupation. We've seen evidence of torture and killings of civilians, and there's been countless of filtration camps, torture chambers. Some are even focusing or especially made for children. And that's occupation means putting civilians through re-education camps. And occupation means threatening mothers to take away their paternal rights if they do not comply with these re-education programs for their children. And most importantly for women, it's the use of systematic use of rape and sexual violence as a way to control them. There's been confirmed cases where husbands are made to kneel down at a gunpoint as their wives and daughters are raped by multiple people. Children are made to watch their mothers getting violated. And as these victims are told, as they're being raped, the reason they have to go through this is to ensure that they are never to have children again. So this type of violence, especially aimed at women and children, is being used as a tool for a genocide against Ukrainian people. And we've seen countless of evidence that this war, this Russian invasion, is not simply an armed conflict, but rather a genocide against Ukrainian people to erase identity and to erase the nation completely. So what do we do? Our organization has been active in Japan for over 20 years, and many projects have focused on cultural promotions in Japan, providing information on the war, helping refugees who are in Japan. But our main focus has, as I mentioned, shifted to help those who are currently in Ukraine. So those are the ones, especially those living in the occupied areas, or the persons who survived the occupation are the ones that need our help the most. So we send medical supplies, we send warmers, general vehicles that help them evacuate, and ambulances that could act as a hospital on wheels to provide the critical medical care, especially in the areas where hospitals are completely destroyed. But these are only the short-term bandages. It's also important that we provide a long-term support for women and children to be able to stand on their feet, to make their own living, to get education, and to grow independently without relying on other organizations. So what we do is we fix schools, we rebuild the libraries, fix the residences that have been destroyed, and to provide safety for these civilians. And one of the most important projects that we worked on is building bomb shelters for school and kindergartens. And given the current situation, schools in Ukraine are not allowed to operate in person unless they have access to bomb shelters, which means that the unavailability of it limits kids, can only allow kids to go through online education. And you can imagine with the limitation to in-person education during COVID, 2 years of full-scale invasion, for some kids, that may mean total of 4 years of online schooling. For those who are in first grade, are in fourth grade. And you can only imagine what sort of limitation that puts for children and how it could potentially impact their future. So shelters, these kind of shelters, and this is a shelter made on a theme of a hobbit house to provide psychological safety for their kids as they're hiding from bombs that are flying over their heads. But also it means access to education. And for mothers, that means ability to safely leave their children to the outside care and join the workforce, which in turn will provide economical stability. It's also important for us to support those families who are escaping the occupation. So we have temporary shelters operating in the eastern part of Ukraine, close to the front lines, for those who are attempting to leave or have managed to leave the occupied areas that are under Russian control. So these type of temporary shelters allow families to feel the safety. It gives them time to reorganize, stand on their feet, and to look for a more permanent solution in their lives. They also provide education programs and psychological rehabilitation that helps women to gain their independence and be able to stand on their feet. And we need, for these type of people, we need to be providing this type of long-term support to provide education, psychological rehabilitation, because the longer people are left without access to these, the harder it will be for them to get back on their feet. And my last message is the war is still happening. It's still going on. Women and children are still under occupation. They're still going through these torture. They're getting imprisoned. They're deported to Russia. We have 20,000 cases of children deported to Russia, and those are only the confirmed ones, where the family, living relatives, are looking for them in Ukraine. Some are put into adoption and unable to be found by their families, despite having living relatives or parents in Ukraine. And at any moment, these territories that have been freed can be reoccupied. And when they do, we will see even more human rights violation we saw earlier. So I want to leave with these 3 points, is that all of these human rights violations committed are not done by a country. They're done by individuals. And those individuals need to be prosecuted. And armed conflict doesn't excuse these individuals from committing genocide. And everyone is responsible. And Russia's action undermines international law, which means we cannot let this slide, or else we will see even more amplified effects throughout the world. And it's vital to continue pressure on all of the Russian institution, and not a single institution can be excused. And finally, we can discuss all of these human rights violations and share concerns, but we need tangible results. We need these long-term solutions that puts an end to these violations. And to protect human rights, and especially the rights of women and children, we need to ensure that those who are responsible, how we can influence that those who are responsible for these violations are held accountable. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sophia, for that presentation. I really appreciate that you put this into context, that this didn't just start in 2022, because I think mainstream media, whenever there's a new conflict around the world, it just seems like it just started then. So thank you for that. And also thank you for describing it as an occupation, because I think we forget when we hear the words war and conflict that there's people on the ground being occupied, individual civilians who war crimes are being committed against. And speaking of people on the ground, we will now move to a discussion of people on the ground in Myanmar. We have two wonderful speakers to talk about some of the different groups that are affected by conflict in Myanmar. And we will start off with Ms. Na Sir. So feel free to take the floor.
First, David, thank you so much for the Human Rights Now, that we get to connect and also get opportunity to speak and especially share the situation of Myanmar, and also get to learn from our sister from the different country. So thank you so much. Before I would like to brief share overview of the situation, a little bit of Burma, Myanmar, especially focuses on women's and girls, how they face and they survived, and they are fighting for the fighting to end military dictatorship since the coup 2021. So since the attack coup, over 4,000 civilians were killed, and that we have seen include 800 women, and also include a cheater killed in hand of the military junta. And also we have seen the toll in a much higher, and a trade soldier carry out the brutal act against the people. Around 400 civilians, included 130 women, have been burned alive of the after execution. And that when we look at in January 2014 alone, we saw 145 out of the 232 verified civilian deaths. Over 6% were attributed this extract and artillery attack. And that also we have seen over half of the those victims were women and girls, and also include children. At least 1,658 individuals, including 111 women, have died in the military prostitution. So this is the overview. And also we had, since the coup 2021 till now, we have 3 million. That may be increased in future as well now. More than 3 million IDP, internally displaced people, fled across the country. So this is an overview that we have in the country at the moment, and that the fighting, especially airstrike and mortar shelling, has continued every day, destroyed the village, burned the house, and it killed the people every day. Thank you. So I will going to show you a video clip, a short video clip that show the ground situation, especially women's feeling and the women's the impact of the women's when they are fleeing, and how they are feel of those situations. Can you hear the song?
I think we can't hear right now.
Okay.
if you want to try again and start. Good now.
pinwanale talai animo pawpi wanale pawdo wanale kumsha animo yit ma na chucha ai chẳng hạn xóa tôi lộ trẻ cái nói này lắm chỉ thẳng quý mà này làm lý anh chị anh yếu xì thì phép còn chẳng ấy xì dù ngài mà ni phép còn chẳng ấy xì dù ni ngài à anh chị mà sẽ sắp em làm lý mà khẳng là em làm lý anh chị thật là lộ việc không mà chồng nếu anh chị chân phản hạ mình chồng thân sản mà đấy chồng phải mà những ngài anh chỗ mà đi chồng lưu đúng này là cái lưu xí này mà ni cái gì bằng như bố về cái này quan tâm không mặt anh như này cái bài bằng như bố anh thế nó cái làm sao thà khăn na ya khi này tiền thà để mình chân phản hạ mình chỗ nè chân la mặt anh như đó mấy
ခုနောက်ပိုင်းမှာပေါ့နော်ကြည်တွင်းထဲကနေပဲသူတို့ဟိုအလှူရှင်တွေပေါ့နော်ပေးတဲ့ဟာတွေရှိတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့တကယ်လိုအပ်တဲ့နေရာထိမရောက်ဘူးသူတို့မတွားနိုင်ဘူးတကယ်ဟိုလိုအပ်နေတဲ့လူတွေစီကိုရောက်နိုင်တဲ့နည်းလမ်းမဟုတ်ဘူးဆိုတော့ခါကျတော့ဒီနေ့ဆက်ဖြတ်ကျော်နေတဲ့ကူညီထောက်ပံ့တဲ့ဟာကတာပြီးရင်ကျမတို့ data မှာရှိနေတဲ့တကယ်အခက်အခဲဖြစ်နေတဲ့လူတွေရဲ့လက်ထဲကိုရောက်မှာဖြစ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီနေ့ဆက်ဖြတ်ကျော်ဆိုတဲ့နေရာမှာလည်းဒီ data မှာရှိတဲ့ data ခံတွေနဲ့လုံးဝပူပေါင်းချိတ်ဆက်ရမယ်အဲ့ဒါမှကိုအမှန်တကယ်လိုအပ်နေတဲ့လူစီကိုကိုယ်တွေပေးချင်တဲ့ဟာတွေကသူတို့စီတိုက်ရိုက်ကိုရောက်ရှိမှာဖြစ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်တို့ရဲ့စစ်ရှောင်နေတဲ့အချိန်မှာတော့မှဒီစစ်ကောင်စီတွေကလေရင်ကိုတုံးပြီးတော့ဘုံတွေလာပြီးတော့ကျဲနေတယ်အနောက်ရှက်ပေးနေတယ်အဲ့ဒီဟာကိုနိုင်ငံတကာကနေတာစီပိတ်ပေးဖို့ကျမအနေနဲ့တောင်းဆိုပါတယ်
Thank you so much, Sir. Any final words?
Yes, just one minute. So I just want to add more about the gender-based violence and sexual violence situation. So actually, in our country, we have been experienced more than 70 decades of the civil war, and it's the sexual violence used as a weapon, and also systematically used since. So we Women's League of Burma documented the rape case that committed by the military junta, more than hundreds. And also, since we call for the ICC, we called the Security Council to refer the perpetrator to the ICC. So this is that we have this call and still keep call because the ongoing impunity happened till now. And if we look at the tide, we just have conflict in the ethnic area. But in 2021, so the conflict happened across the country. And that a lot of gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and sexual violence, include rape, include the children, the girl, that they don't even know anything of, even they don't know how to report or how to say anything. So we have increased every day without any mechanism to report, and without a platform to, or a group to report those violations. Then we don't have any justice system, judicial system in the country. That's why we only call and hope from the international to take action. This is the crimes that against humanity and war crimes, and also crime that violence the victim and survivor. So this is the responsibility of the international. And second, the assister of the humanitarian aid or any serving provided assistance. So this also we hope from the international to consider and give more the conflict affected women and girls and especially very deeply the people who are faces those violations. So we have heard Japan government support a lot of the humanitarian aid system, but mostly the support they give to the UN agency, that the civil society, as you already see in the video clip, that those groups can access to the area that we have be, or especially women's group that based in cross border in India or Thailand. They can't even access like those women's groups. So we also urge the Japan government to consider it and take the weight to provide the funding directly to the women civil society that access to those people, the people that impact on the conflict. And also we asked our colleagues here have more solidarity with us, include Ukraine and other countries as well, that the most conflict happened in the country. So we also want your solidarity and support as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I am so happy that you are really uplifting the different ways that violence shows. It's not just on the battlefield. It is sexual violence and sexual harassment faced by women. It is poverty. Poverty is a form of violence that it can't tell who's a soldier and who's not. Children are affected, women are affected. So thank you for bringing light to that. Next, we will have another speaker on Myanmar. We have Miss Ning Kwan. Feel free to take the floor.
Thank you, Larissa. Let me share my PowerPoint.
And we have some questions coming in the Q&A. To everyone tuning in, feel free to leave some questions because we will have some time for Q&A at the end.
Okay. So yeah, since my colleague talked about the whole, overview condition of the Myanmar, I would like to focus talking about Kachin State. Kachin State is the northern part of Burma. We have been under triple crisis. Even the military coup happened in 2021, but we had pre-existing conflict from 2011 to until present. Right now, my mom is on the run. Yeah, my hometown has been trapped right now. No one is able to go out from my hometown. No one is able to enter in my hometown right now in Kachin State. So yeah, we have pre-existing conflict, and also the COVID pandemic also came. And then even before we will recover from COVID, even we all got, vaccination, the military coup happened. So this is like overlapping challenges that we have. This is a story of school teacher called Abok. It's happened in 2021. She was like being sick for COVID, and then the bomb just her home was bombed. Like the whole family was being like under like they were like being sick for COVID, and then her home was bombed while she and her family were battling for COVID. And in this chaos, she lost her career, but also her health. She still has some piece of shrapnel in her lung. So amid her struggle, she found a glimmer of hope participating in a mental health session run by our organization. So this is about human rights violation cases that happen in Kachin State. So we've witnessed that an alarming surge in mass human rights violation following the coup. KWAT has documented that more than 1,200 cases of such violation, and this case includes over 13 homes has been destroyed, and also military forces has been targeted to at least 189 women. So it has been they have been arrested. And additionally, 373 women have been arrested in my state, and many are still in the detention center. This data not only highlight the scale of the crisis, but also underscore the urgent need of international attention to address the grave injustice. And let me link to with our topic today. And the theme of CSW we're supposed to talk about today is accelerating achievement of gender equality and achievement of all women and girls by addressing poverty and strengthening institutions and financing with gender perspective. We Kachin women are not really accepting, receiving social protection right now. Allow me to share some challenges that my society is facing. As you know, government public services has been halted since the coup because many government servants, like civil servants, has joined to civilian disobey movement. Teachers and health workers especially joined the movement. So no one, like few people are working for the government department. So without legitimate government, not to mention public services running autonomously, the junta is neglecting them, and their hospitals still exist, but we don't have medicine and people to work for the hospital. Destruction of infrastructure, disruption of transportation network, fuel and security restriction, power shortage, internet cuts, and currency depreciation. All those issues devastate the economy and particularly affect women and girls, including women-led business. This photo is showing that a woman has, like pregnant women has to travel to a clinic next to the nearest village. So a lot of infrastructure has been destroyed, so they have to carry her like this. This is a picture of IDP has been being trapped in Kachin State in Wymore Township, and it was taken yesterday. So they were released, but they have been trapped in the village for like more than 7 days. So how about let me share about the social protection system that what kind of social system that we are having right now. So women are having a lot of hardship. This overlapping crisis struggle, resilience of women amidst overlapping challenges and affect their security, health, and economic rights. So impact on women's leader activities after the coup, they cannot run their organization as as before, and they cannot collaborate, they cannot coordinate each other. They have to operate secretly. And according to UN Myanmar, 70% of women report a decline in household income following the military coup. There is also a concerning increase in HIV case in Kachin State due to, since economic hardship is happening, there are many girls has been working as escort girl, they are like her at the KDV bar, they would work, sex worker that we normally don't see in on the street. They would just go around and dress up, and then they would ask for, customer. They would wait for customer. So according to UN Women, 7 out of household has been experiencing a fall in their household income since the military takeover. And 6 out of 10 women have experienced a fall in their own personal income since the military takeover. And also women between 31 to 39 years old are eating less food, likely to reduce their food intake due to less income. And not only that, we also have a human trafficking issue in our state, and also in the Kachin region in northern Shan state. Due to political instability and economic disparity, are major driver behind human trafficking. This is the trafficking route to China. So traffickers are often known, like our sister from Ukraine said, traffickers are known to the victim family. Connections are made through social media, adding layers of complexity to the issue. In the last 4 years, our organization has provided shelter and support to approximately 400 individuals through our safe house who have endured traumatic experience of the trafficking. Despite being natural resources rich state, we have rare earth, we have gold, jade, things like that, but local community in Kachin State see little benefit from those natural resources. Trafficking routes are mostly commonly observed from Muse, Lao Cai to Wat region to Pangsai Tao, and also directly to China, although international trafficking from remote access to city center are also prevalent. The lack of community benefit from local resources combined with the case of the contact between trafficker and potential victim significantly contribute the trafficking pandemic in our region. These are the 7 types of trafficking cases that my organization have observed in the past 4 years. So there is also a coordinator from Kachin Women Peace Network told me that young people have right now they have no choice. They choose to leave the country. If you don't have option to leave the country, you need to join the armed forces. This is creating the militarization, a continuation of conflict in our country. So there is also another rural woman told me that she said that we don't have men in our village anymore. They are going to join ethnic armed forces or migrate to neighboring country. Now women are taking the role of like working by manual labor and also daily wages job. And regarding economic opportunity, an organization, a research organization called Humanity Institute conducted that they have found 12 findings. The 8 on barrier to small-scale business activities among women and girls in village community in Kachin State. These 12 barriers highlight the multifaceted challenges that women and girls in Kachin face, underlying the need for intervention that address both practical and cultural challenges to empower them effectively. So they also recommended that to empower men to empower women business, we need to create long-term and low-interest loan, microcredit loan, grant for women startup. And also we need to support for business-related capacity building training, technical skill program, and also knowledge for startup business for small-scale enterprise, particularly for women in rural community. And the next point they recommend is that focus on promoting business strategy that leverage local context, resources, markets, and women's experience to support women business. And the last point is strengthening women's business community, business network for women, and also where the women, so that women can share and learn from each other. And we also have, my final slide is, I would like to share TWAT's recommendation. I would like to invite all international organizations, international institutions, government to support human rights initiative work and support for mental health, related funding, and also advocate for accountability to support for the call for impartial, independent investigation and prosecution of those responsible for international war crime and committed by all armed actors. The third recommendation is to alleviate women's voices by prioritizing perspective of women survivors, human rights abusers in the process of transition justice as part of effort to build a future federal democracy state. We also would like to advocate for cross-border aid and support to provide aid and support the victim of human rights abuses through collaboration with local and ethnic administration, community group, strategically engaging with local organization. And we also advocate for economic sanction to implement economic sanction targeting financial interests of military regime in Myanmar to pressure establishment of federal democracy. Next, we also would like to call for ceasing forced recruitment to pressure all armed actors to stop forced recruitment, to comply with civilian protection measures, including the prohibition of landmine, deployment of explosive ordained, and also recruitment of child soldiers, preventing human rights violation. The last, to engage in democracy building, federal democracy building, by encouraging governments and donors to actively participate in creation of a new federal democracy in Myanmar as desired by its citizens. So this is everything I have today. I would love to take a question if you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kwan. I think it is very important that you are highlighting the war crime of destruction of infrastructure, because we are seeing that all too often in conflicts. I know just recently, 2 Russian soldiers are now going to the ICC for destruction of infrastructure in Ukraine. So hopefully we start to see that in other places, and that translates to Myanmar and hopefully to Gaza as well. So we will be moving on to our next presentation on Gaza. To introduce Ms. Ida Al-Hindi, feel free to begin your oral statement.
Hello, everyone. So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ida, and today I stand before you, not just as a Palestinian from Gaza, but as a witness to the unfolding horrors that grip our land with an iron fist of oppression and despair. The cries of our people, echoing through the shattered streets of Gaza, are a haunting reminder of the atrocities that have plagued us for centuries. This is not merely a humanitarian crisis. It is a relentless assault on the very essence of our humanity, a nightmare that knows no end. From the depths of Israeli prisons to the rubble-strewn streets of Gaza, our people endure unspeakable atrocities every single day. Thousands of men and women languish in Israeli prisons subjected to unimaginable cruelty and brutality. Women, in particular, bear the brunt of this oppression, enduring beatings, rape, and torture behind bars. Our children are not spared from this horror. They are kidnapped, their organs stolen from their innocent bodies, and their lives callously extinguished. In the past 5.5 months alone, countless lives, including many women and children, have been brutally taken in the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Over 40,000 souls have been perished, their fates buried beneath the rubble of bombed out homes and schools. The true extent of this devastation remains unknown, with over 1.5 million people displaced from their homes, their lives shattered beyond repair. The situation in Gaza is not just dire; it is a waking nightmare. Palestinians endure unimaginable suffering, starvation, thirst, darkness, and deprivation of the most basic necessities. Women, our mothers, our sisters, and daughters, are forced to endure childbirth without anesthesia, while countless others face amputations without mercy, using nothing but rudimentary tools like kitchen knives. How many more of our loved ones, our neighbors, and our children must be sacrificed before the world finally takes decisive action? How many mothers must undergo abortions or suffer miscarriages? How many more mothers must say goodbye to their children? This is not just a crisis. It is a human rights situation that demands to be fixed. We are humans too, and we deserve to live. And yet, amidst the chaos and despair, the horrors of Gaza continue to escalate. Picture, if you will, the harrowing sight of a pregnant woman, her lifeless body riddled with bullets, yet still clinging to the fragile thread of motherhood as her unborn child dangles from her womb. A grotesque reminder of the cruelty of war. Imagine the agony attached on her face as she frantically searches for her other child, only to find him hanging lifeless from a tree, a chilling testament to the savagery unleashed upon innocent souls. This is not just a tragedy. This is not just a tragedy. It's a grotesque injustice that demands immediate action and condemnation. We must confront the bitter truth. This is not merely neglect, but a deliberate assault on humanity itself. Women and girls in Gaza face unimaginable challenges in accessing essential healthcare and hygiene products. Pregnant women struggle to find the most basic nutrients, while young girls entering womanhood are left without even the most basic sanitary products or facilities. What kind of world do we live in when young girls are forced to use scraps of their own filthy tents as makeshift sanitary pads, risking infections and lifelong health consequences? What kind of humanity are we when innocent lives are cowardly taken out in quest for more survival? This is not just a crisis. It is a calculated campaign of cruelty. It is a systematic effort to extinguish hope, dignity, and life itself from an entire population. Such atrocities demand our immediate and unwavering condemnation, and they compel us to act with urgency and resolve. Let us stand together, united in our condemnation of these unspeakable crimes, and let us work tirelessly towards a future where every individual, regardless of their circumstances, can live with the dignity, rights, and opportunities they deserve. These children, our children, deserve to have fun and play. They deserve to live. It's time for the world to wake up. We've had enough. No more dying. No more killing of children. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ida. I'm tearing up a little, honestly. I think just hearing everyone speak today, the resemblances are so striking that you can hear in everyone's presentations. And it really shows that we are all just sisters here experiencing the the tragedies of armed conflict throughout the world. And I think too often these conflicts get compared and it's this conflict or this conflict. No, we all need to come together for peace. We all need to come together to end war. Otherwise, we will all be collective victims of this. So we will move on to our last speaker, Human Rights Now, from Human Rights Now. Kazoko, if you want to share your presentation to close us off tonight or this morning, wherever you're tuning in from.
Yes. Thank you very much. So my staff is going to make presentations. Oh, no, okay. So without waiting, so I'd like to make my last remark. Thank you very much for our wonderful speaker today on the situation of women in Ukraine, Myanmar, and Gaza. War and violence is always a root cause of the poverty. These recent conflicts have caused devastating impact on women's life and dignity. I'd like to conclude this session with some remarks related to our work of Human Rights Now. So regarding the Ukraine, the first Russian aggression has been a flagrant violation of international law. We condemn all violation of international human rights and humanitarian law and targeting killing of the civilian by Russian attack. We have released various statements on Ukraine conflict emphasizing these acts, including the deaths of the more than 10,000 civilians. We reiterate our grave concern over the situation of women and children affected by the conflict, including children taken to Russia. One of the actions we took is to participate to We for Ukraine campaign. So through this campaign, we have called to all the business contributing to the conflict to withdraw their business from Russia. I hope that many organizations will join in this campaign. And as for Myanmar, Human Rights Now has been working on the situation for a long time. We are extremely concerned over the situation of Myanmar people after illegal coup. More than 2.2 million people have been displaced after the coup, and many people live in IDP camp in the forest area without water, electricity, and sufficient food, as our friends just demonstrated. The women and girls, including pregnant women, are the most vulnerable due to a lack of medical care and widespread sexual violence. Further, the military recently announced the commencement of the compulsory military services, which will prolong this conflict and force many young people to fight in this illegal war. So we call for the UN Human Rights Council to act on this situation and further call to the UN Security Council to adopt a strong resolution to end the military illegal rule and to restore democracy in Myanmar. And regarding Gaza, since October 7th attacks, Israel has escalated its military offensive and destroyed entire Gaza. As a result, over 2 million people have been displaced and over 30,000 people have been killed. I must underscore that 70% of them are women and children. Moreover, due to lack of access to the humanitarian aid, many women and children are reportedly starving and dying. So this is an imminent threat to the lives of them. In January, the ICJ, International Court of Justice, just ordered Israel to take provisional measures to prevent genocide. However, Israel has ignored the order and continued its attack against people in Gaza and to impede humanitarian aid. And further, I'd like to underscore that the United States and several Western countries continue to supporting Israel. And they have also cutting funds to UNRWA, which is against the ICJ order and facilitating silent genocide. Killing of the people must be stopped immediately. We call for an immediate ceasefire for access of humanitarian aid and the release of the hostages. We strongly demand Israel to end its genocide. So we must stand for the women in Ukraine, Myanmar, and Gaza, and all women affected by the conflict. So they are the things we can support for them. So first, the raising your voice on the killings and attack to the women and children. Talk to the leader of your country to end the conflict and restore rule of law and peace, and boycott the business contributing to the war, and donate and increasing support for the people in need. To do so, please rely on the voice on the ground. We highly recommend today's participating organization is very commendable activity. And if you have any chance to donate to this organization, please do so. And so let's continue to do what we can do and keep solidarity. Thank you very much for your support and participation and concern.
Thank you for ending us off, Kazoko. And thank you everybody for attending today. I think that this session really showed how global issues are more similar than we think and how we really need to end war everywhere. It's not just in one place or one incident. This is systematic and systematically violent against women especially, and we need peace everywhere. So thank you everybody for attending. If everyone wants to say their goodbyes.
Thank you. It
Thank
was
you
nice
very
meeting you all.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.